Welcome back to Bryant-Denny Stadium on this gorgeous Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Roger Hoover, glad to welcome you to the Conecuh Sausage Crimson Tide Tailgate Show. And I'm pleased to be joined by today's Cook's Pest Control Sideline reporter once again, back-to-back weeks. It is great to say hello and roll tide to former Alabama linebacker Christian Miller. Roll tide, buddy.
Roll tide, Roger.
Well, another week for the Crimson Tide. First of all, let's talk about your role that you have on the broadcast and to be on the sidelines. How did you enjoy that last week and getting to talk to Coach Saban at halftime?
It was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. I had a blast down there. It was cool to see everybody. And then everybody was excited to see me with the microphone in my hand. Will Anderson was, giving me a little bit of a hard time down there. But, no, I enjoyed it. It was fun, and I'm glad to be back this week. And it was really cool to interview Coach Saban. It's just so special to kind of go from, playing under him and having him yell at me on the field a little bit, and then now I'm there carrying a mic and hoping that he's not going to yell at me when I interview him at halftime. So I enjoyed it.
Well, you did a great job. And you mentioned Will Anderson, and when Will first came on campus, an immediate comparison for everybody was like, hey, you remember Christian Miller who we just had? Will is a very similar type player. Just what do you enjoy about watching his game and seeing the steps he's taken? Man,
he's special. And I'll even go as far as saying, he definitely – he has a little bit more ability than I had. I have no problem saying that. He is a one-of-a-kind player, and what I mean by that is, he's capable of rushing the passer. He's dominant against the run, and he's athletic enough to drop into coverage. And then, the cherry on top is this guy is a great leader. I mean, this is the kind of guy that he's a coach's dream. So he's very special. I love watching him play. He reminds me of that old-school type of player. He's just physical. He's disruptive. And he's exciting, so I love watching him, and I always enjoy, catching up with him when I see him.
When you're an edge rusher like that, how important is the first step?
Oh, it's important because you're trying to beat that tackle to that spot. So you have to get off the ball. You just want to. That's the first key. You're keying the ball. You're keying your tackle in front of you, and you want to get off as fast as you can and take a big first step to gain ground and beat that tackle to that spot and be ready for the combat. Once you get to that third step with that tackle, and whether you're going to use your hands or try to go to a power move and whatnot. So the first step is very important, and you can't overlook that. Some guys are too busy thinking about what move they're going to use, but you can't overlook that first step.
We're talking football. It's presented by Bojangles. It is tailgate time with the Tide and the new Bojangles app. Bring the flavor to your tailgate with chicken, biscuits, and all the fixins by downloading the Bojangles app to order ahead for tailgates and whenever it's Bo time. Bojangles, it is Bo time, y'all. Now it's finally time for some SEC football. The Vanderbilt Commodores in the house, and we've been hearing, Christian, this is a much improved Vanderbilt team from even a season ago.
Yeah, they do look a lot better. I've watched them in their few games that they've played. Their offense looks it's an interesting offense. They like to run a lot of zone read and option plays. Their quarterback's mobile, but against Hawaii, they did a really good job forcing turnovers, and they just looked overall a pretty solid team. Now, granted, they still haven't probably played somebody as talented as Alabama, but, overall they look improved. I think their coach is doing a really good job putting them in position to make plays. So I'm excited to see what they have to offer tonight.
What's the challenge of preparing for two quarterbacks? They have A.J. Swan, who threw 4 touchdown passes last week against Northern Illinois, was the SEC Freshman of the Week, and then they also have a really mobile threat in Mike Wright.
It's tough. I mean, I always think back to if you listen to what the Georgia guys were saying when we played them in the SEC Championship when Tua had got hurt and Jalen came in. You heard those guys saying, like, hey, we didn't prepare for Jalen Hurts, and that's why we struggled when he came in the game. As a defense, you try to do your best to prepare for your opponent and kind of have an idea on what to expect, but I think that's kind of the challenge. You try to prep for Mike Wright, who's the more mobile guy who likes to run that zone read, and then you have the freshman quarterback here that's been playing really well, airing the ball out. But at the end of the day, you just have to do a good job of doing your assignment, and that's the most important thing. When you play these option teams like that, it's very critical that you do your job. You have to know who has the quarterback, who has the dive, who has the pitch. You just have to make sure you play assignment football because that's what's most important.
How's that communicated on the field? How do you guys make sure you're all on the same page, play in, play out?
So basically, pre-snap, you'll know, depending on the call, who's responsible for what. Normally, the edge guy as a standard, he's normally the quarterback player. But there's different things that you can do to mix it up and almost force them to make a decision. An example, we would give force calls, right? The inside linebacker could give you a force call as a defensive end, and what that means is, hey, you go force the quarterback to pull it. So that means the edge guy is going to run it. He's going to crash the dive. forcing the quarterback to pull it, and that inside linebacker knows my edge guy is taking the dive. I'm just going to V-line towards the quarterback. So you're basically forcing them to make a decision, and it normally can set it up for a tackle for loss if you do it right. But generally speaking, one guy will have the quarterback, one guy will have the dive or the pitch, and you can interchange that, but it's all about communication. You have to communicate.
And I imagine that's really important in practice because we always hear that it's tough practicing for an option team.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, again, you just have to play assignment football. You just have to go to the basics. It looks a lot trickier than it is, but again, if you have one guy for the dive and one guy for the quarterback, one guy for the pitch, and so be it. Normally things take care of themselves. The issue comes when guys get a little eager, their eyes aren't disciplined, and they're looking in areas that they shouldn't be looking. And next thing you know, hey, I'm supposed to have the quarterback, but I'm looking at the dive, and he's taking off down the field now. You have to be disciplined when it comes to that type of football.
Roger Hoover joined once again by today's Cook's Pest Control sideline reporter Christian Miller, and I'll just start here. What is the tough challenge for Alabama against Vanderbilt?
I think the biggest challenge for them is defensively, just doing a good job stopping these quarterbacks. It looks like the freshman's going to get the nod to start, and looks like he's a pretty good thrower. They have a really good receiver, number 14, big, tall, physical receiver, who I think might be leading the SEC right now, as well as a running back, number 2. I think he might be the second leading rusher. So on offense, they seem to have some things going for them. So I think defensively we need to go out there, be physical, stop the run, and then when they do decide to pass on third downs, we need to do a good job, defending the pass and affecting that quarterback. He's a young guy coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium playing Alabama for the first time, so he's probably going to have some nerves in him. So I think it's important to kind of get him a little nervous, and I think we'll be pretty solid on the defensive side of the ball. On offense, I really want to see them kind of get that run game established early on, and I want them to just make that a point of emphasis. That way, it opens up the passing game, because when you run the ball well, it forces the defense to put guys in the box and respect the run, and then it takes guys away in the back end. That way you can try to take the top off the defense. So I think just getting that run game going would be so important for Alabama going forward, because again, then these teams can't just sit in split safety coverage and try to sit back there and try to take away those deep balls from Bryce.
And at some point, there's going to be a game that comes along where Alabama, say, has a 10-point lead, 7-point lead. You need that fourth quarter drive where you really need to churn out the clock as much as possible. That's where the running game has got to take over, and that could be the case tonight. No,
that's a great point, Roger. Yeah, you want to be able to rely on your running game and know, like in special situations like that hey, we can get it done. Which again, we're Alabama, we can get that done. I just think it's been a little slow early on, but again, we're still early in the year. I think these guys are still kind of figuring out their role and identity, and I think as we go on, we're going to see that start coming together, and I think a lot of things are going to finally start meshing, and we're going to kind of get back to that standard of Alabama football, running the ball, being physical and dominant, because I keep hearing Coach Saban talk about it, so I know it's being reflected upon the team. So I think that's definitely something to look forward going forward to seeing them do that.
And in the passing game as well, we continue to see Jahmyr Gibbs be the top receiver for the Crimson Tide, even though he lines up for the most part in the backfield as a running back. Just who needs to emerge among Alabama's wide receiver core?
Honestly, anybody. I feel like right now anybody just needs to step up. I think it'd be great for Bryce to have that one guy to say, hey, like, I got you. I'm here for you. You know where to find me. You know what I mean? You look back, we've always had, whether it was Amari Cooper or if it, Julio Jones, that one kind of guy that asserted his dominance. Even look at like Calvin Ridley or Jerry Jeudy, those guys that really just were like, hey, like, I'm the target. You know where to find me. And I think, it could be Burden, it could be Holden, it could be Brooks, whoever it be. I think it's kind of open. And right now, these guys are playing great. Don't get me wrong; they're doing a lot of good things. But I think it really could help having that one guy kind of step up and emerge as that go-to guy. That way, Bryce knows, like, hey, I'm under pressure. I know who to look for. I have that guy that I can depend on to get open and make a play when I need him to.
So that's going to be important for the wide receivers. We'll go to the other side of the ball for just a moment. You mentioned some of the defensive keys for Alabama. How about in regards to Alabama's cornerbacks? Because that's still a group where we're seeing some different guys get some different playing time and still try to find that consistency early in the year. Yeah, and that's what Coach Saban's going to do. He's going to keep plugging and playing until he finds the right guys in the right roles. And that's just how it normally works out. And it's not a bad problem to have. It just really means you have multiple guys that are able to step in and contribute when you need them to contribute. So you got some young guys that are doing a really nice job, some older guys, some more experienced guys also in the back end. So
The DBs have been playing really well, and I expect them to continue that. And I think it's just going to be important going forward because, again, once we get into SEC play, teams are going to get better. There's going to be better talent. The coaches, are going to be better. So everything is just better. So you have to be on your A game going forward.
We just saw the Walk of Champions to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Coach Nick Saban is starting to make his way back into the locker room after his pregame walk. For you, when you were playing for the Crimson Tide, what was your pregame routine? Were you very chatty? Were you just locked into your music with the headphones on? I mean, what was Christian Miller like once you made that Walk of Champions, once you got in the locker room?
I always kind of had my headphones on. I'd have a conversation here and there, but I like to have my music playing. But my biggest ritual, I guess you could call it, was we used to have bands set up in the locker room. Specifically, they were in like the shower area or the bathroom area of the locker room here, or on away games, we'd have them set up as well. And I'd always get me a little pregame pump. It used to just get me ready to go. I guess it's one of those things where I'm like, when I get out and I get my pads on, I'm feeling, a little big because I came here as a little skinny little kid. So, once I finally got some muscles on me, I was like, man, I like these. So I used to just get in there and get my pump going. That way I used to go on the field and I used to feel good about myself. So that was my thing. I used to do some curls and do some lat raises and whatnot.
You had to be Coach Cochran's favorite then.
I was probably one of them. I had to live in the weight room. I don't think I had a choice, Roger. I had to put on weight, man, if I wanted to play here. So I lived in the weight room.
Well, it paid off. Certainly a great Alabama career time in the NFL as well. And now you're going to be on the sidelines again tonight for Alabama against Vanderbilt. Christian Miller, just thank you so much for joining us. Roll Tide. Hopefully we get to chat again after a great Alabama victory. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Roger. Thank you.
That's Christian Miller. He is today's Cook's Pest Control sideline reporter for us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We'll be back with more, talking some Crimson Tide soccer, winning ways for Westhart and the Crimson Tide soccer team. We'll talk more about that when we return in a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.